Hi everyone, how you doing? I just gotta take out some of my stuff here. Whenever I go anywhere, I bring some stuff along with me that I just like to have on me always. So first, of course, when you're traveling somewhere, you gotta have some kind of safer, some type of learning, right? Because just in case you find yourself waiting for a subway or a meeting, you have a free few minutes, take out a safer, you can learn it, so leave it over there. Also, of course, I gotta have a watch to tell the time, gotta know, what things going on over here, so we'll leave that over there also, just gotta leave that there. So just a couple more things here. I got my calendar with me, I always take it with me to make sure I know exactly when I'm going, where I need to go where. I got my contacts also. I got to make sure that I have people that if I need to make phone calls, so I have it here with me also. I got to make sure I have that, so let me just leave that right there. Hold on. Also, I'm new to Chicago relatively, only been a few years, so I have to bring a map with me when I go places, so I would make sure I take that with me. I'll leave that right there. Also, if I get bored, I'm sitting in the car, I need some music, so I don't know if you know what these things are. These are called CDs. Right, just in case we need some of these, we'll bring some of these also. Leave that over there. Hold on, just a few more things here. I may get stuck in the dark somewhere, so I gotta have a flashlight. Stole this from my kids. Cool little flashlight here, okay? So leave that also over here. Just in case I need to pay some bills, I brought my checks and my bank stuff. I gotta leave that over there. It's empty, don't worry. Just in case someone asks me a math question, I gotta have my calculator with me, so gotta leave that there too. And then I can't leave home, of course, without taking some pictures of my kids and family and everything. So adorable, look at that, okay? Let's leave that there too. Well, that's a few more things. I'm almost ready, don't worry. Couple of bills, just in case I gotta pay some bills also. So we'll leave those over here, almost done. And then if I really get bored, I have nothing else to do, I can take some magazines. I took one from my wife, Eating Well, so she has these. Okay, we'll leave that one here also. One Jewish magazine also, Family First. Okay, just leave that one here too. Almost done. And just in case also, I never leave home without a deck of cards, of course. Gotta have that one there too. And then also, just in case I want to play a game, I'm bored. So I have that there also. Okay, so now I am ready to finally start speaking and presenting to you. Now, who here thinks I am present and focused and ready to speak to you with all of this in front of me? Think I am? Really? Wow, okay. That'd be a very, very strong talent if I had to be able to look at all this stuff, especially some of these bills. You don't want to look at this stuff. Trust me, to see all this stuff and to still be present and focused right where I'm supposed to be and to be concentrating on you. And different question. Forget about me being focused. Do you feel like you are my priority tonight? No. That I am actually going to be focusing on you, that I want to be here with you? Or do you feel like maybe there's some other things I want to be involved in tonight? So this is how we present ourselves to everyone around. This is how the world presents themselves to everyone around. Right, what do we do when we walk into a meeting? I don't have my phone on me, it's in my pocket over there, good. We walk into a meeting. See? We walk into a meeting, what do? We take our phones, right? Don't worry, if your phone is out like this, I won't take it as an insult, don't worry at all, I do it all the time. Right, we put our phones down in front of us, we turn it upside down, and it's upside down right there. So basically what we have done is we've taken every single thing on this table and we've put it in front of us right here. And now our minds have to be engaged and present and focused on whatever the task is, whether it's a business meeting at work, whether it's a date, whether it's a time where I'm just praying to God, I'm praying to Hashem. And somehow with that little box there, with all of this stuff, we just don't feel at home unless we have all of it, and then we're supposed to be fully present and fully aware and fully engaged in what we're doing. So this is what I want to talk about tonight. First, if I could just maybe clear some of this stuff away, actually. That would just be a little helpful. I didn't plan that part out in my presentation, how I was going to clean it up. But, here we go. We got a helper. Here we go.
I'll take those checks.
Okay, yeah. Like I said, it really is empty, by the way. I'm not joking. The checkbook, not my bank account. Don't worry. I'm saying the checkbook is empty, yeah.
So you don't want the calculator?
Yeah, you never know. But, all right, all good. Let's leave it safe right here, just in case you don't put that back. Okay. I do need this, because that's what I'm saying. Okay, so let's talk about this stuff. Let's talk about technology. So Rabbi Garfinkel, actually, I don't know if you realize that he stole my line. He stole my line of that the world has changed more in the last 15 years than it has during any 15-year time period. So I actually say 10 years. We're already into how the world has changed. If we go back to around the year 2007, and we go, I believe that's when the first iPhone came out. 2012 is when the whole thing exploded. That's when the numbers went from approximately like 40 or 50% of the population owned a phone, now to it's like 90%, maybe 95% of Americans own a smartphone. So in 2012, that's when the whole thing exploded. It really is only in the last like 10 years that the whole world has completely changed, and everything about us, everything about the way we live life, everything about the way we relate to each other has completely changed upside down, is completely turned around. So we have to understand this. We have to understand how this happens, what are the changes, what are we missing out on, and what can we do to make a healthier relationship. As Rabbi Ephraim Goldman explained, the 3 levels. There's between ourselves and other people, there's between us and God, and between ourselves and ourselves, which really on a certain level is the most important part. So that we're going to save for the end. We're going to start with interpersonal relationships, talking about how these phones have changed how we relate to each other. So who do you think was the greatest leader the Jewish people ever had? Just throw any suggestions, any ideas out there. Just think about who? Moshe, good, Moses, right? Moses. He was the greatest leader the Jewish people have ever had, if not the greatest leader in history, right? He's the one who took the Jews out of Egypt. He stayed with them for 40 years, wandering in the desert. He's the one who went up to the top of the mountain to get the Bible, to get the Torah from God. He spoke to God in heaven, whatever that means. He brought the Torah, he brought the Bible down to us, and he is the basis for everything that we do. And yet, what do we know of Moses from the very beginning? What do you think was the first thing the Torah tells us about that made him really into Moses? So what happened? So the Torah says that after he was born, he grew up. Okay, good, he grew up. Great. You know what he did next? The Bible says, it describes, Vayetze el Echav. He went out to his brothers. Vayetze el Echav. He went out to his brothers. Vayar b'sivlosam, to see in their suffering. Now, what does that mean? He went out to his brothers to see their suffering. What do you think that means? What does it mean he went out to see their suffering? He was, remember, at the time, he was living with Paro, with the Pharaoh. He was the prince of Egypt. And yet he goes out to see these lowly slaves. So he goes out to see their suffering. Why would he do that? Any ideas, any suggestions? Why do you think? A prince of Egypt, goes out to see the people suffering. Why would he do that?
Empathize?
Excellent. Because he wanted to learn to empathize. He wanted to see, what are they going through? He paid attention. He wanted to understand, what is another human being going through? The rabbis teach us there's this strength that every human being has. It's called the imagination. What do you think you use the imagination for? To imagine good, excellent, what? What do we imagine? Creativity, to solve a problem maybe. We use our imagination to think of maybe some far off places that we'll never get to visit. We use our imagination when it's a freezing cold night and it's raining to think of a nicer time. We use our imagination maybe to think of, if you're a sports fan, maybe the Bears winning the Super Bowl. We use our imagination to think of all these different things.
Beyond imagination.
Beyond, it is. It is. I know. It's sad. It's a sad story. Although I'm not from Chicago, so it doesn't really bother me that much. But I do teach. What'd you say?
It took 108 years for the Cubs.
Right. I think if it takes the Bears that long, the city will go into like a full-blown depression. That's it. I work in a high school with boys. I mean, the excitement before this season started, and now just how the whole place is like walking around just like this. It's sad. It really is just sad. I feel bad for the guys, these major Bear fans. But anyway, so other reasons why we have an imagination. So our rabbis teach us, you know why I need an imagination? Because let's say I have a friend who's going through a life situation that I've never been through. So I don't know what that experience is like. So Baruch Hashem, thank God, my parents are alive. Both my parents are alive. But let's say I have a friend who lost one of their parents. And now I want to try to help them. I want to try to empathize with them. How do I do that? If I myself have never gone through that experience, so how could I do that? Moses was the prince of Egypt. He had every luxury you could possibly imagine. How could he relate to a bunch of slaves? What do? We use our imagination. We use our thoughts to try to put ourselves in someone else's shoes to try to see what are they experiencing, what are they going through. If I can do that, then maybe I can help them. If I can't do that, still maybe I can try to be there for them, but in order to help them in the best way, we try to put ourselves there. We use our imagination. Now, what happens if we don't have that imagination? What happens if we aren't thinking? What happens if we aren't like Moses and we don't try to pay attention to what everyone else around us is going through?
Sympathy.
What did you say?
Sympathy.
You were saying to have sympathy, or?
No, that's what sympathy is.
That's what sympathy is. We just feel bad. Right, we just feel bad and say, oh, such a sad little story. Oh, that doesn't help the person, right? Just makes them feel worse even, right? It's not doing any good for anyone. It just holds us back, I would say even sympathy then, at least you're noticing it. At least we're noticing it. Very often though, we don't even notice it. We look around at people's faces and we can't even see that, you know what? That face, I know what that face, I don't want to look at anyone specifically because I don't want to make them think I'm talking about them. That face is a sad face. I think something's going on with that person. Let me ask them, you know what? How are you? Are you having a bad day? It seems like something's going on. I mean, yesterday, the day before, you had that smile, you had that jump to your step. Now all of a sudden you feel a little off. I'm looking at your face. There's something off a little bit. But we can't do that unless we're paying attention, right? Unless we're trying to see people around us and trying to understand what they're going through, trying to put ourselves in their shoes, trying to use our imagination to try to think, well, what's going on with this person? Then we can try to help them. Then we can try to be there for them. Here's what we learned from Moses. Really the first thing that we learned from him, to use our imagination, but we can't do it if we're just buried down like this. We're not even just, people are walking around us. You walk through the city of Chicago. It's great whenever you get those opportunities because then it's just case studies all over the place. People are just not even paying attention, nothing. You're driving down this crazy traffic over here. Every red light turns green, turns red, turns green. I thought I got out of New York City for a reason. All of a sudden I come downtown Chicago. It's the same thing over here apparently. People are walking through, not even paying attention, just going down like this, not completely ignoring the world around them. And it's one thing if they're doing it when they're walking around in the street outside, but unfortunately very often they're doing it when there are people around. And it becomes much more serious, we won't get into this too much, it becomes much more serious when it's being done inside of a home within a family. Right? We have parents, let's say, who are just going like this, and the kids in the meantime are having whatever issues the kids are having, the parents aren't looking at their faces. They're not seeing, they're not trying to understand, well, what are my children going through? I want to be able to understand what they're going through. I want to be able to help them through their situations. But I can't if I'm not looking at their face and I'm trying to pay attention. Yes?
Yeah, I was going to say, because I think probably most people in this room are around the age where we're just at the cusp of remembering before and
Right.
that transition, and some
Right.
of us still living at home, when most people had smartphones. And I've talked to a lot of friends. You could see changes in families as smartphones entered, and even around the dinner table, where before it was not normal to have anything at the dinner table, and
Right.
then my dad would start looking at his phone and bringing things down, and it impacts how people are.
Right, for sure, 100%. I'll tell you very much along those lines, I talk to a lot of families where they have kids that are, let's say, even 7 or 8 years apart. So for some reason, parents haven't picked up on the fact that if you have one kid who graduated high school, let's say in the year 2010, and they have their youngest kid is still in high school now, those are not the same generation. You can't treat them the same. So I've heard parents say, well, my oldest was fine, so I'm sure my youngest will be fine also. I want to say, I want to yell at them, no, it's an entirely different world right now. You can't treat them the same. You have to help them understand what's going on. They're growing up in a totally different world. So another area, and by the way, please, questions, comments, definitely, you'll keep them coming for sure, 100%. So another area that I'd like to talk about, it's a very important thing. It's a very important thing. Yes, please. Yes.
I did something absolutely dramatic. Suri and I went on a date. That wasn't dramatic. We tried to do that. But I wanted to show her that I was going to be present.
Oh, okay, good.
You ready for this? I left my phone at home.
Wow. At home, not even just in the car. You left it totally at home.
No, at home.
Wow.
And you know what?
You survived?
Changed the whole night.
You survived.
Changed the
Wow.
whole night.
There you go.
We went in the restaurant. I looked around. I was felt all morally superior.
Right.
For once in my life, because I'm all the time.
Right.
For once, I look around. I'm they're on their phone. It was unbelievable. There were 6 people at the restaurant table, all coming out to talk to her. They're all literally. I was like, that looks silly. Don't get me wrong. I'm usually doing that, but I'm anyway, it was a great date. So any dates? I don't know.
Right.
It was revolutionary for me. It was revolutionary.
Right. I had a guy tell me actually just recently, he said that he was going out with a girl on the first date. On the first date, she pulled out the phone and he's like, I couldn't go out with her again. I'm like, yeah, I hear you. I hear. Yeah, I hear. So, okay, but so another thing that I like to talk about a lot, and it's a very important thing. I usually focus this more with teenagers and high school students, but I think it's very important for young adults also. It's something that I myself try to work on and try to practice. Sometimes in life we feel weird, right? We feel uncomfortable. We're just put in awkward situations. Like for example, so Rabbi Ephraim Goldman, so they know all of you, and they come into this group and they see everyone, and it's great. I don't know any of you. You're very nice, you all look very nice, and it's a great group over here for sure, but it definitely is an awkward situation. I stand over here, I was sitting in the corner just like, okay, I'm just gonna be awkward, okay, hi everybody, hi. So life has so many different awkward and uncomfortable situations. And sometimes they're just like fun, okay, whatever, you're going on a blind date, like, oh, okay, hi, it's a little bit awkward and uncomfortable, okay, but hopefully, you manage to get through it a little bit, and you break the ice with however you break the ice, okay, great, awesome. But sometimes these situations are serious situations. Sometimes, let's say, a friend, like we talked about before, let's say a friend loses a parent. And what does someone do after they lose a parent? Someone dies? Right, they sit shiva. But basically they have to sit down in a room on low chairs, and they're not allowed to really do anything for the whole week, and the community comes and visits them. Now, in the best of circumstances, and when we're talking about death, it's relatively speaking. I mean, let's say the person who died was 100 years old, and they left children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. They lived a full and complete life, and their death was just painless and quick. In the best of circumstances, again, relatively speaking, it's still a very awkward situation. You go in, the person's sitting there just like, I'm really sorry for your loss. And then what do you do? What do you say? What's the next reaction? Who knows? Unfortunately, very often there are more tragic situations. Maybe the person was much younger. Maybe even was a child or a teenager, God forbid. And now you walk in, you have to do that Shiva call, it's called, where you have to visit the people who are mourning, and then what in the world do you say to them? Right, so very often you say nothing, you just sit there, and that's good, but they're uncomfortable situations, and so many people nowadays, they avoid it. They can't even go. They can't go because they can't be in those uncomfortable situations. So nowadays, what people do just to fulfill their obligation, so when we hear that a person dies, there are 3 Hebrew words that we say. The words are Baruch Dayan Emes. Baruch Dayan Emes means blessed is the truthful judge. Blessed is the truthful judge. Meaning that we assume that even though something bad happened, we assume it was all for the best and it happened. So Baruch Dayan Emes, if you spell it out in English, it would be B-A-R-U-C-H, Dayan, D-A-Y-A-N, M-S-E-M-E-S. So what people do nowadays, when they hear tragic news, they just send a text, B-D-E, and then they're done. They're done, that's it. Now, I don't have to go to that person's house. I don't have to sit in front of them. I don't have to try to console them at all. I don't have to put myself in that awkward situation. I'm just going to stay away. I'm just going to text B-D-E through a text. Maybe I'll add a little emoji with some tears coming out, and now I'm done. And now I'm done. Why do I have to go visit the person? I did exactly what I have to do, right? And I've seen this. This is how people do it. Because we're not used to feeling uncomfortable. We don't like going through awkward situations. One of the most important skills in life is to feel comfortable being absolutely uncomfortable. Something I like to do when I go into public places, and again, people look at me and they think I'm some weirdo, but okay, I'm fine with that usually. So let's say I go to some community event. Let's say there's a dinner for an organization or a wedding or something like that. So what does everyone do during the downtimes? So everyone's got to find someone to talk to. You got to be in some kind of group, talking to someone, right? And if you can't, let's say you're talking to 3 or 4 people, all of a sudden you pick your head up and all 3 of them walked away and you're by yourself. Oh gosh, so what do? Instantly, boom, oh, whew, okay, now I feel okay. Whew, now I feel okay. You know what you do? Go to your table, sit down at your table, and just sit there. And don't do anything. And just look at the room. Just don't do anything. You'll feel totally and completely awkward and uncomfortable for the first few minutes. But then you'll actually feel empowered. You'll feel good. You feel like, wow, you know what? I can actually sit here like this. I don't have to be talking to someone or be distracted every single second. It's a very important skill to be uncomfortable. Try it. You'll see. You'll think about me at those times. Like, yeah, you know what? That guy was right. Wow, this is a cool feeling. I don't have to do that. Wow, it's great. Try it. Okay, so moving on. They did a study. I'll share with you a couple of interesting things. One that I saw research for, one that's my own theory, no research backed, but I think it's true. So you'll tell me what you think. Okay, so they did a study. They put a bunch of strangers together, one-on-one, okay, to have a conversation. With one group, this whole group of strangers, one-on-one conversation, they were each holding their phones next to them. Off, on silent. Just next to them holding their phones, and they said, have a little conversation. Good. That group of strangers, they said, have a little conversation, no phones allowed, put your phones away somewhere. Which group consistently reported that the interaction they had with that stranger was more meaningful? Which group consistently? The ones without the phones. Now again, the phone was on silent. They weren't answering it, they weren't picking it up, nothing. But it was just there next to them, they were holding it. And still, consistently, it was the group of strangers talking one-on-one with each other, having the same types of conversations, the same types of people, consistently, through whatever questionnaire they gave, they rated their interactions as a more meaningful conversation than the other group. Fascinating. Just by having the phone there, it limits what we're doing. And I think a lot of that has to do with the little game I played at the beginning, because then, number one, I'm not fully present. And then number two, you're looking at me being, this guy doesn't care about me. This guy's not really here to talk to me. He doesn't care about me. He just got that thing over there. He's just waiting to see what else is going to go on. Right? He's got that FOMO. He's just talking to me now because there's nothing else to talk to, no one else to talk to. The second something better comes up, he's going to go talk to that person. We have all these crazy thoughts in our subconscious, but this is the way our brains work, and this is the way we're trained to think. Your hand was up? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I have a final question.
Sure, yes.
So,
Before we
Oh,
do
sorry,
questions,
no.
just say
Yeah.
your name just so we can.
Oh, yes, that would be good. Yes.
oh,
Okay,
sure,
yeah.
I'm Shauna.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Hi.
you. So, one, I guess something that comes to mind is in like work context, a lot of the time I feel like people, especially at high levels, have a lot that they have to be responsible for simultaneously. So that's actually when you asked originally if I thought you were fully present, I think
Okay.
in my head it's like you can still be fully present while also being like holding yourself accountable to external things you need to think about at the same time. And
Okay.
I just noticed that a lot. So I guess what do you think about that? 'Cause like I go into one-on-one meetings all the time, and people who I report to or higher ups have their computer, have their phone, but I do still feel that they care about my time. They just
Right.
have other
So you could tell them that I said they better turn it off. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I'll let them know. Be like, I
kidding.
went to this work,
Right.
please turn your phone off.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I'll let you know if I have the job.
Right. Yes. It's not my fault if you don't. I'm just. But you're right. People who are very smart and who are very capable, so maybe they can multitask a little bit. But in general, it's just human nature. If I'm putting my attention to 3 different things at the same time, just by definition, I'm not doing any one of them perfectly. So I didn't include it in my quotes over here, but there is a quote from, I believe it was from Catherine Steiner Adair. She wrote the book, The Big Disconnect. She's a professor at Harvard. So she wrote the book, The Big Disconnect. It's one of the first books that came out on this whole topic. She's a major authority on this whole idea. So she writes, I think this is from her. She says that we have become master multitaskers, but deficient unitaskers, or whatever the phrase is, but something along those lines, that we've become great at doing many things all together, but we lack the ability to fully put ourselves into one thing. So I'll say even for your bosses, I would humbly say that maybe there is something a little bit missing there. If you two weren't here, I'd maybe say something. So I work in a high school, and so none of you know anyone in the high school, so I could say whatever I want about the high school, and it's not so bad. But I have gotten complaints from students that when they talk to certain administration people, the administration are taking out their phones nonstop. And the students know that I have this side job also that I talk about technology. So they tell me about this, and I say, you're right. I don't know what to tell you. You're right. That if they're talking to you, and in the meantime, they're also saying, your grades are really bad. Yeah, you really need to work harder in class. So it's going to give the student the impression that they're not so important to the person. Yes?
I have a different perspective on it, just from like not so much that I don't think that you you think I'm as important, but it just like distracts my thoughts. So like when you had all your stuff there,
Right.
I just kept like looking like, okay, that stuff's gonna follow. Like I was
Right.
by it.
Right.
And then like I think that when you just gave that situation, if I'm trying to explain like why I'm upset about my grades or something to like someone and I see that, it just kind of interrupts my thoughts, even though it's like
Right.
not my own phone.
Uh-huh.
I think that,
So that's a good
and I
point.
realized that. So.
Right. So that's a good point.
So
It's very true. Right.
Yeah.
Very true. Right. Even the person sitting and watching it happen, it's also true. Yeah.
So kind of off of that, I'm a teacher and I work with a lot of kids all the time, and even coming from when I was in high school versus them, we weren't allowed to have our phones, and now you can't stop them from having their phones, and so teachers put
Right.
these like pockets in the front of the room and
Right.
say, drop off your phone here. But there is research that shows, and I've witnessed it, that if the kids, if your phone is within sightline,
Right.
you are somewhat preoccupied and somewhat distracted
Right.
and thinking about it. And for me, like what you're saying, I, from the other end, am watching them watch their phones or watching them think about something else, and so I'm distracted because that's all they can
Right. So that's a good
focus
point.
on.
Right.
And so it is kind of this dichotomy in how it
Right.
functions.
Right. So
But
it does, and just in general, the bottom line is it interrupts the interaction.
yeah.
Right? It definitely interrupts the interaction. There's not as much as a meaningful interaction, whether it's just practically speaking of getting the job done of what the conversation was supposed to be about and accomplishing the goal, or if it's supposed to be more of like an emotional bond that we're trying to build here, then it's just not happening as much. So I do this other weird thing. Again, I do a lot of weird things, so hopefully some of them are productive. But this other weird thing that when I'm talking to someone, if in the middle of the conversation they take out their phone, I just stop talking. I just stop. And then after a couple seconds, they realize I stop, and they say, "Oh, it's okay, keep going." I'm like, "No, I'll wait. It's all right, I'll wait." So I have to be careful who exactly I say that to. But in general, you try doing that also. It's again, be careful who you say it to, though. But okay. So that was the one, the study I saw. I want to share with you my own personal theory. And again, not to say, God forbid, anyone who does this is in big trouble. I'm not saying that. Don't worry. So there's this new concept that we call binging on episodes, right? We binge on TV shows. You could watch like an entire season. I talked to these high school boys. They watch like an entire series of The Office within like 1 week. It's like I'll talk to guys and be like one day I'll talk to them and say, "Oh, what season are you up to?" Season 2. The next day when I say to them, I say, "Oh, so what episode are you up to?" No. I say, "Now what season are you up to?" Like 1 day later, because that's all it takes, 1 day to finish an entire season. So what's the big deal? Who cares if I'm binging on Netflix episodes? So again, this is my own personal theory. You can take it for whatever it's worth. Fine. How do Hollywood directors pick their actors and actresses? Is it just based on who's available and what kind of contract they can sign? How do they pick their actors and actresses?
Who fits the character in the part the best?
Say the better, talent, true, but you have to, there's another part of it. What? What does that mean, who fits the part? Looks, but what kind of looks? Meaning there's something extra they're looking for. What?
Who will audiences like best?
Right, but on a deeper level, not just who they like best, who will they connect to? Who will they relate to? Oh, that guy, that's me, that's my life. That girl, her situation, that's me. I feel like she's living my life. That was the whole major controversy that came out with Netflix and 13 Reasons, right? That whole story. Why did they pick that girl? Was it Hannah Baker? I don't know what her real name is. Why did they pick that girl to play the part? Because she just had that relatable look. She just had that regular, ordinary American high school teenager girl look. And so people related to her, and they can connect to her, and that's what they want out of the show. They don't want you to just be entertained, they want you to feel connected. So now when I was growing up, and we watched TV shows, you knew that you watched this show for half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it was, and then the show stopped, it was over, and then when was the next time you watched the show? Next week. You had to wait an entire whole week to watch the show again. God forbid, you a whole week to watch the show again, right? So now, the characters I'm connecting to, I watch them for, let's say again, 42 minutes, stop, break for an entire week, and then I watch them again. Even if I am relating to them, how much of their life and their actions and their behaviors am I internalizing? Probably not so much, right? Because it's just once a week. What's the big deal? But now let's say I'm watching the same character that I very, very strongly connect to, and I very deeply internally relate to that person. Now I'm watching them over and over and over and over again for 3 hours tonight, 3 hours tomorrow night, 3 hours the next night. What's going to happen when the next day I have a friend who says something to me that's very similar to what was said to that character on the show. What's going to happen? Without my even realizing it, I'm going to react the same way that character reacted. My perspective on the situation is based on what I see. If I see the same thing over and over and over again, especially when it's someone that I relate to on a very deep level, so it's going to affect how I view other people around me. And what they say, how they're acting. So what we were talking about, Moses, right? He looked out to the world. He wanted to understand what people are going through. How do we understand what people are going through now? Whoa, isn't that what happened on that TV show the other day? Oh, so she reacted like that. I know exactly how to help that person. Except, what's the difference between Hollywood and real life? Is Hollywood real life? No, it's not, right? So what happens is, again, we think those situations are exactly how we're supposed to react. And then, again, subconsciously, we automatically, internally just react that way because that's what happened in that show. I've seen this very, very often when dealing with couples. That you see them kind of having a fight and trying to work out a disagreement, and you can see it, that they're basically trying to play out a TV show. That the way they're reacting, and I'm thinking like, wow, I remember a TV show exactly like that. So maybe it's just my own problems. I don't know, but you could see it because, again, because we're doing it over and over again, because we have the ability and the capabilities nowadays to watch the same episodes again and again and again, the same show, so it becomes much more internalized. And again, it changes how we interact with each other. Yes?
I mean, I see what you're saying, but also I feel
Again, I feel free to argue, by the way, because it's my own theory, so not backed by any science, so yeah.
Go for it.
Okay, yeah.
But like, I also feel like, well, first of all, I think there's a lot of good in those shows in like teaching
Right.
morality in the same way that someone would read like a biblical text to like try to internalize ideas from stories and like apply that to their real life. And
Right.
ultimately, like stories are recycled, and so they're just in different form.
Right, okay, I hear. Right, so again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying to go home and cancel your Netflix subscription right now and never watch ever again. All I'm just saying is just...
I am.
Well, okay.
I will say
Right.
though, one
Yeah.
thing that I think is like, with the whole binging thing is like, one thing I've noticed is like, with TV shows, it used to be more of like a communal thing. Like
Right.
I know when people would watch Friends when it was like actually on TV.
Right.
But
Right.
because it only happened once a week, people would have like parties to like watch
Right.
the show, and now you just like sit alone in your house and like, I watch a show that came out like 10 years ago and no one else I know is watching it right now.
That's
so
a good
we're,
point.
like,
Right,
talking
okay.
about it.
True, it's a good point. Again, the medium through which we gain access to these things has changed, so it does change around a lot of our interactions. Good point. Okay, so moving on. So you have a few more minutes here, so I just want to... Actually, I'll share with you one more quote before we move on to the next part. So this quote comes from Howard Gardner. Howard Gardner is the, I believe his unofficial title is the father of positive psychology. He's also, I believe, if not mistaken, associated with Harvard somehow. So as long as you mention the word Harvard with anyone you quote, so it automatically gives it some credence. Okay, so he says as follows. Ultimately, we find that the quality of our relationships in this app-driven era depends on whether we use our apps to bypass the discomfort of relating to others or as sometimes risky entry points to the forging of sustained, meaningful interactions. Meaning, do we use our phone as almost an icebreaker, but then once we've broken the ice, then we have a normal interpersonal relationship? Or is our entire relationship through the phone? That's the difference. As long as we're just using it as a convenience, then great. Want to text someone, hello, hey, you want to go out tonight? Because it's a little awkward calling up someone and saying, hey, do you want to go out tonight? Okay, fine, great. But then once we're out, as long as we're actually talking face to face, so then the phone wasn't the only way we communicated, it was an icebreaker. We use the phone as an icebreaker. So that's what determines the difference. According to Howard Gardner, that's what determines the difference. How strongly connected are we to the phones? Again, I've seen this with married couples that I remember, one of the things that was so shocking to me when I first got turned on to this whole topic of technology. Again, this is going back, is before I moved to Chicago, so we're talking at least 7 or 8 years ago. So a couple was talking to me, they were engaged at the time, they were describing this whole fight that they had, and I said this, but then she said that, and then she said that, and he said that, and they're talking back and forth about what they each said. And then they said, and then later that night when we were talking, and I said, wait, hold on, what do you mean later than that when you were talking? Wasn't this whole thing talking? And they said, no, this was all through text. And I had never heard that before. So it was just shocking to me. You had that whole argument all through texting? I said, well, yeah, of course. Like, okay, wow, now this is like, that was my first shock that this is something that's changing. The way they interact or they argue, it's just, they can't argue face to face. They have to argue and disagree only through texting. So I actually suggest to couples, if you're going through an argument, you want to use your phone, here's how you use your phone for an argument. Type up a whole long message, whatever you want to say. Type it up. Because you know what? We're not perfect with our words. We always misspeak. We always say words that we don't mean to say. We fumble for the exact perfect word that we want to use in a certain scenario. So you want to type it up? Fine, go ahead, type it up. You know what you do next? Don't hit send. Walk over to the person and say, hi, we have this little disagreement going on. I want to share a thought with you. Is it okay if I read it because my words aren't so perfect always? It's okay if I just read what I have written down over here. And then say it face to face. That way we're using our phones again, not as deterrence, not as a way of shielding us from having awkward conversations, uncomfortable situations, but rather we're using it to help us. Okay, yes?
That's another observation, especially with the younger generation, and like us who, like you said, we've grown up, we saw the before and now the after, and these kids grew up with it in their hands, and so
right.
What I'm saying is an extreme lack of empathy in what you're talking about, and the inability to make eye contact and the inability to
right.
relate in person
right.
because everything is here, and there's a whole new language, which is texting language, and how you
right.
interpret
Textese,
right.
I believe it's called.
how you
Yep.
interpret certain punctuation and how you interpret certain spellings. Like, it's so
right.
meticulous and specific, and so not only are kids really not able to communicate face-to-face without feeling extremely uncomfortable,
right.
they're also now not able to daydream or like the creativity you were talking about, the imagination. Right. They don't have the quiet time.
So that's a whole different topic. Right? That's a very important thing that we could talk about for a long time. Also, it's you're right. It's a big topic.
Kind of
right.
comes together.
Right. They did again. It's another study that I saw that. I forgot the exact numbers, but something that when you're having a conversation, in order for it to be a meaningful conversation, you have to have eye contact. Whatever it is, like 70% of the conversation, you have to have direct eye contact. No one just stares directly like that. That's just weird. But there's that like on and off eye contact. But they found that in order for it to be measured as a meaningful conversation, it's supposed to be around, again, I don't remember the exact numbers, maybe it was like 70% of the conversation should be with direct eye contact. They found that nowadays most conversations are only 30%. So just automatically limiting the connection that the people are having. Yes?
So can I ask make a cynical point?
Sure, 100%, yeah.
/ argument.
Okay. Yeah.
You said like we went from 50% people that have phones to 95% or higher.
Right.
And people are finding themselves in these awkward situations more and more. And so we're resorting to our phones. We're texting arguments,
right.
etc. That's the trend. And you're kind of arguing we should be fighting against that and go
yes.
back to face-to-face conversation.
Yes.
Well, if everybody's more comfortable and the trend is the other way, to be less face-to-face, why don't we embrace that and just get super comfortable and just only talk?
I'll make your question even better. For thousands of years, how did people communicate from a distance? How did they communicate?
Light. Sound.
No, with letters, right? They didn't talk to each other with letters. Oh, okay. So people could say, so for thousands of years, if you, right? So if people communicated from a distance using letters, right, and not face-to-face interaction, and life went on for thousands of years that way, then isn't text messaging the same basically as sending a letter? So why can't we go back to that? And now we're accomplishing the way they lived for such a long time.
I sometimes text people who are sitting on the same couch as me.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay.
Because
great.
I think they're actually, they might even respond.
So that's it.
It might
right.
be the most direct form of conversation.
I hear. But again,
I'm playing the
right.
advocate there.
You're right. No, so you're right. So those situations do come up. Let's say when I'm interacting with my students, right? So let's say there's a certain student who I think needs a little extra talking to. There's something's going on. He's going through a tough time. So I want to talk to them. So I could pick up the phone and call them, But then I have to be honest with myself and say, if I call this kid, he's not going to know what to say to me, how to talk to me. He's going through a tough time. If I want to help the kid, so it wouldn't make sense for me to call him. And it's an unfortunate reality. So you're right. Very often, for those situations, I will text the kid. And it goes against like my essence, because I feel like I should just be fired from my job because I'm texting instead of calling. But you're right, the kid will feel more comfortable that way, so I do it that way. But I make sure at some point to make sure that they understand, what the conversation was in my mind that I had. So, but you're right, it's an interesting dilemma.
I haven't figured out sarcasm via text.
You have to have the right emoji. You have to have the right emoji with the right emoji. You could do anything. You could do anything. Yeah.
I also think that it's impossible to resolve. I mean, you can resolve an argument over text, but I think that myself personally, I stand my ground more when I hide behind the text. So I think that's where that empathy component comes in. I refuse to see, I refuse to relate to the other person on the other side, and I'm more I don't have to give in. They're all the way. I don't feel bad. If I say this, I can stand my ground. But if I have to look at them, then I do it, and I wouldn't say the same things if I'm in a fight with someone or if I'm mad about something.
Right, sure, again, because I'm just communicating with the screen. It's not another human being, so I don't have to be careful with my words as much. And almost instinctively, I won't have as much inhibition. I think it's called, I forgot that there's a phrase people come up with, something, screen disinhibition or something like that, where I don't have to hold back in what I'm saying. I could just let loose whatever my thoughts are about this person. But if I was talking to them face to face, I would just instinctively just be much more careful with what I'm saying.
You have to see their reactions.
Right, to see reactions, right, exactly. Yes. So.
Everything pretty much you said, and I totally agree with. And I think
Okay, great, thank you.
As you start, no, but I think but as you start embracing the negative impacts of technology today, at what point do you also take a step back and then you say, how do I weigh the current negative impacts of technology on today's society versus the positive impacts of technology on today's society? And when I take a step back and I weigh the two, what if I look at the positive impacts on today's society that technology provides and say, you know what, back to Zach's point, why would I stop kind of embracing this new trend? Because look at all the positive technology is adding today.
Right.
There's millions of examples, right? Just there's millions
100%.
of examples that technology is ruining everybody's lives today.
I would venture to guess, how did everyone get here tonight? Meaning, how did everyone not get here physically? How did everyone learn about this program and know about this? I was just guessing.
That's perfect. Rabbi Garfinkel broke his foot, and I remember actually our conversation, and he said, I actually have been so much more productive. Sorry to put Rabbi Garfinkel on the spot, but it was amazing. And I've had so many more conversations on my couch, and I've been so much more productive because I've been able to connect with so many more students and get the word out 10x more, whatever you said, just by setting up 30-minute phone calls with students. And that it was eye-opening to
The
you.
blessing of a broken foot.
The blessing of a broken foot.
I didn't have to, you're scheduled this and that, and I was like, forget it. 30 minutes, Zoom,
Go
phone.
back to your dinner thing. Go back to your dinner date. I feel like it's a balance. I mean, it's the
So
complete opposite.
Right.
So then it's I feel
Exactly.
like it's
Right. So then yes, I'll go back to this quote.
How do you find the balance and start to learn and weigh the positive impacts versus the negative impacts to the point where you want to stop embracing technology on kind of an overload
Okay, so
basis?
good. So excellent question. So, all right. So I'll take a few minutes to answer this question. I'll very quickly, hopefully, and we'll get to a question after. Let's say there are 3 levels of texting. Okay, 3 levels of communicating through screens. There's factual or practical. Okay. There's conversational, and then there's emotional. Okay. Factual, practical things are, let's say, hey, I'm running a little late. I'll be there in 5 minutes. It's annoying to pick up the phone and call while you're already late. I got to pick up a dial. They may pick up. They may not pick up. I got to leave a message. They may not get the message. Whatever. You know what? I'll just send a very quick text message. Okay, that's practical, factual texting. Oh, by the way, I'm lost. What office is the shear in? Is the lecture in? 1200. Okay, great. Little simple, easy things. That's factual, practical texting. Then there's conversational texting. Hey, how you doing? How was your day? What's going on? How was your night? You went on vacation. How was your vacation? And you share a little interaction through that, conversational texting. But then there's emotional texting. Hey, I hear you're going through a tough time, you want to talk, through digital communication. So practical texting, factual texting, no problem whatsoever. Again, it's not good to fully always rely on it, but again, if you call up someone and say, hey, what room is the lecture in tonight? Again, now just people be like, that's why you called me? That's weird. Okay, I have to pick up the phone for that? Okay, so again, you have to find the right line, but just a practical thing, go ahead, no problem. Even conversational. It's late at night, not sure the person's awake, you have to be quiet because your roommates are there. I actually just had someone call me. I was in New Jersey over the past holidays, and one of the students called. So again, I was in that awkward situation because I couldn't talk because I was around my family who was sleeping at the time, and there was really nowhere to go where we were where I could talk out loud. So I said, listen, I can't really talk out loud right now. It's okay if we just text a little bit. So sometimes conversational texting very much so has its place. It's when you get to the emotional texting, that's when you have to be very careful. Because once you start on the emotional texting, that's when you lose out on those conversations you have with other people where you really build the relationship, you really build that bond. And not only that, but you really learn about someone else. Because you're looking at them face to face or you're hearing their voice and you're picking up on their social cues, you're hearing the intonations about what they're saying, and the whole conversation takes on a much deeper level. So when it's an emotional thing, that's when very, very strongly recommended to do it through just speaking on a phone, even a video chat, something like that, where you are actually speaking to the person, quote, face to face. So those three levels maybe help things again. And then again, to keep this quote in mind, that when we're using technology, just to kind of make that little bit of a breakthrough, to break the ice, then okay, great, awesome. But when, let's say we want to start a relationship, so okay, you do the first couple of conversations through a phone. Okay, fine, great, through texting. But then at some point, it's got to lead to more and something deeper. And that's when we have to make sure that we're not using the phones to hold us back and to avoid the awkward situations, but rather just using it as an icebreaker, just to get us over that little obstacle. Yeah.
So what I was going to say was, I hate when people do this, when you ask a question and someone else answers, but can I give my opinion?
Sure, okay, yeah.
What he said.
Okay.
For me, I feel that the way to bridge the technology use is to be super cognizant of how it's affecting you. So in a few ways, one being, if you're watching a TV show, there's a lot of positive TV shows out there. There's a lot of really negative TV shows out there. So being hyper focused on is watching this like really good for my like soul and whatnot. Like there was like one big show going around now that I watched an episode and I was like, whoa, it was so good, but I was like, whoa, I was like, this is not good. And so just being super cognizant of like why you want things, for instance, and then additionally, I guess my view is more relationship with yourself versus like others is
right.
What I feel like you
right, so we're gonna get that soon.
So then
or
also in terms
right.
of like if you want to text or if you want to like watch something as simple as like TV or like the news in the morning, being super cognizant of like what am I trying to gain from this? Like, is my headspace like, would it rather be thinking right now or would it rather be taking in? So just being like, in my opinion, like super cognizant of how what's happening is affecting you and your reasoning behind what you're doing.
Right. So it's an excellent point to be cognizant, to be aware. And if we can really sum up kind of all the things we have to be thinking about here, because again, don't get me wrong, I have a smartphone, it's there, it's right in my pocket. I have certain limitations on my smartphone. My wife knows I have certain things, like Rabbi Ephraim mentioned, in terms of going out with his wife. So I have a thing that when I go to synagogue to pray, I only live a block away, so it's very easy for me to do this. I never bring my phone to synagogue to pray with me. Not that I bring it, I turn it off, or I leave it outside in the parking lot, or whatever. No. I leave it in my apartment, and I walk. And that 1 block walk that I do, maybe whatever it is, once a day maybe, is the most peaceful walk like you could imagine. Just like I can't talk to anyone right now, I can't do anything, I can't accomplish anything. I'm just walking, I'm looking around, and I'm just taking all the sights. Just having that time, we could just think about it. Just be cognizant, to be aware. I'm not saying to throw the phone in the garbage, but we do have to be aware how it's affecting us. Are we doing it for productivity purposes, for convenience purposes, or has it gotten to a point where it's kind of taking over our lives? So I think we do have to take a little bit of a break now. It's 7:25.
Yeah.
So, all right, so we'll take a little bit of a break for. How long?
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Oh, so we'll take a little 10-minute break. We're going to do, like Rabbi Garfinkel said, we have a fun little workshop planned for everyone. I will be staying around here, so any questions, please feel free to ask.
He doesn't have
And
to
then,
be awkward by himself.
but exactly, I'm going to sit in this corner right here and just be awkward, and you can watch me be awkward. It'll be great. But really, any questions, any thoughts, definitely feel free to share. And then hopefully we'll pick up again in about 10 minutes.